Hi, welcome back. Today I have a bit of a random video for you. Basically, there are a few little craft projects that I've been wanting to do for ages and sort of just put off because they haven't fitted super neatly into any of the rooms I've been making. A couple of them might work in the next room, which I am currently working on, but I thought it would be nice to just do a little chill sort of craft session and knock out a few of these ones that I have been procrastinating on. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into that. So this is an empty bottle of supplements from this company called Boots, which is like a UK pharmacy. And most of their own brand supplements are in these bottles that, to me, look exactly like a miniature kind of swing lid dustbin or trash can, I guess. It might be a little bit small for 1/6, but I think with only a small amount of work, we could make it look pretty convincing anyway. So step one is obviously just going to be removing the labels. Okay, that came off a lot more easily and more satisfyingly than I thought it would. So now we have our blank slate, and I wasn't sure whether or not to do this, but I do think I'm going to try and cut around this circular sort of flat space on the top. Fingers crossed I don't immediately slice myself this time. Okay, so I finally had the wherewithal to check the inside, and we have this like reinforced cross-section in the middle. That sort of changes my plans somewhat. I wonder if I could cut that out in any way. I think pliers are probably the better call for this. So much for it being a quick craft. Looks like I might be able to sort of snap them out by just twisting. Okay, I've managed to remove most of those like plastic inner workings now, which I'm hoping means I can cut out this circular part. Oh man, it's snapped the outer casing part a little bit, but fingers crossed that won't be too noticeable. This project feels a little bit cursed now. Okay, I carried on cutting it out off camera and the rest was a lot more successful. I've left it attached at the top there, and I think logistically it's gonna be better to have it as like a lift top bin rather than like one of the kinds where you can push the lid inwards, because I think in that case it would collide with the threading on the bottom half anyway. So I'm just going to kind of try and neaten up these edges and probably okay, you know what, this might be more of a blessing in disguise really, because obviously I had already damaged this cutout part, so maybe I will just try and neaten up the hole it left, and once it is, I'm going to lay it with the hole side down onto a piece of scrap card and trace the shape of the hole, cut that out, check that it fits. Not perfect, but I think close enough. And then I'm going to use a little piece of tape to act as a hinge at the top, and then it can just go back onto the base, and that is the beginnings of our bin. And if I was going purely for realism, I would probably paint this either black or silver, but since I want to put it in the dopamine decor kitchen, I'm gonna get a little bit more creative with it. I'm going to paint the whole lid section in this deep red, and then the bottom in a sort of cream colour. Once the lid is dry, I'm going to add a few little white spots all around it. I'm also going to add a little bit of green to the base of the bin to hopefully sort of look like grass. Then I'm going to take a little strip of black bin bag and fold it, or more like roll it, I guess, so that I can shove one end into the base of our bin and then fold the rest over the edges. Pop the lid back on, and now we have a whimsical little bin that hopefully kind of looks like a little mushroom. So I'm going to put this one into our dopamine decor kitchen. It's barely visible back there, but I think it makes a fun little accent if you're looking closely. But since I have loads of these little bottles, I went ahead and made a plain silver one as well, in case I ever need a bin for a less whimsical room. And I must admit, this one does kind of look more realistic. For the next craft, I really want to make my best approximation at a dupe for this little miniature chair that I used to see all the time on Amazon. I really liked the look of it, but I never ended up buying one. And then my mum took a trip to IKEA and ended up finding these little, like, plant stands, I think they are. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but she said they were in like a houseplant section of the store. And to me, they kind of have a similar vibe. I was a little worried that they would be too low to the ground for a Barbie. However, my mini-me is on a petite made-to-move body, and she fits pretty nicely in there. Her feet are kind of flush with the ground, and I think it will raise it up even higher when I add the cushions that I'm planning to make. So I think for like a little accent chair in a living room or something, they will work fine. What I need to do is try and hide the fact that these metal bars which form the legs kind of jut up above the actual seat, because those are going to prevent the cushions I make from sitting flush. And it looks like we're going to need a square about 6 by 7 centimeters, which I'm going to cut out of some scrap cardboard. Then I also need a piece that will go around the whole perimeter, so that'll be 6 plus 7 times 2, which is 26, I think. So I'm going to cut a long rectangle of cardboard that is 1 centimeter by 26 centimeters. And then this will wrap all the way around this piece. However, first I need to cover both of them with fabric. Before I do that, I want to add a little bit of cushion to the main piece, and I'm gonna do that with some cotton wool since it comes in these like rectangular strips, and it should fit quite nicely on top of our cardboard rectangle there. Then for fabric, I took apart this old glasses case for the leather. However, I actually found that the lining, which I think is like a faux suede, is a much better color match for the seat we're trying to replicate. Fingers crossed we'll have enough real estate here to make both cushions. So I'll just lay my main piece cotton wool side down on the back side of the fabric and cut around the outside, leaving some seam allowance. Then I'll add some strips of double-sided tape onto the cardboard that we can use to secure the fabric edges when we fold them over. Then when I have also finished covering the long strip in fabric, I'm going to use double-sided tape again to loosely attach it around the outside of my main piece. But then once it's all situated, I'm also going to secure it by adding some hot glue to the underside. When we place it on our metal chair base, that does a pretty decent job of disguising the fact that the seat isn't flat. Then, of course, we also need a cushion for the back, and this time I will just be using a normal technique to make a cushion. I kind of want it to sit on top of the bottom cushion, so we're going to measure from there to the top, and that's 4 centimeters. by 7 centimeters again. Fingers crossed we still have enough of this fabric to cut out 2 rectangles with those dimensions. Even better, I managed to get it so that I would only have to sew 3 of the sides since one of them will be on a fold. And I'll cut them out, including a seam allowance, of course. Fold it in half, good side to good side. And then I will sew along one of the shorter sides and the longer side. Once that's done, I can use the remaining gap to turn our cushion right side out. Stuff it with some polyfill. And finally sew that last side closed with an invisible or ladder stitch. And that is our little dupe chair finished. I do wish the back cushion laid a little more flush with the seat cushion. I could probably kind of manipulate it into doing that. Or alternatively, we could just add like another decorative little pillow in the middle to hide the gap. But yeah, I think for now that turned out honestly kind of better than I was expecting, so that's cool. The next craft is inspired by a piece of custom content that I downloaded for The Sims 4 ages ago. And it's like a coffee table slash side table that is shaped like a giant vinyl record. I thought it would be really fun to make one in miniature, and then I discovered those little sets of like vinyl record shaped coasters, which I figured would be perfect as a base for this. Which I happened to mention to a friend of mine, and they actually ended up getting me a set for Christmas. And this set comes on like a little record player stand, which is really fun. But we have got 4 individual mini records here with a few different designs. I think this one is my favourite, so I'm going to try and turn it into a little table. Since I want this to be like a side table or a coffee table, I'm going to use our seat we just made as a guide for height, and I think 7 centimeters should be pretty good as a length for the legs. I think this will be able to work pretty well as like a tripod table, so I've cut 3 7 centimeter lengths of wooden dowel. And then I also sanded one end at an angle. I don't have a miter cutter, I think they're called, so I can't promise that that angle is precise across all 3, but fingers crossed I should be able to just glue them onto the underside of the record, and hey presto, have a table. However, since I kind of want to go with the retro styling of the record itself, I think I'm going to try and stain our wooden dowels a darker shade of brown. I could use actual wood stain for this, but you know, I'm not going to bother for something this tiny, so I've just mixed up some heavily watered down paint in like an orangey brown shade that I think will go well with that like mid-century modern type aesthetic. Hopefully it will be just enough to stain our dowel pieces without completely obscuring the wood grain. Okay, that took a few coats and it was also turning out extremely orange, so I ended up adding a smidge of blue to the paint mixture to neutralize it, but now I think they look pretty good. I think super glue is probably going to be my best bet for attaching the legs. I don't think hot glue would adhere that well, and it'll also probably be a little bit too bulky. So I'll just put 3 dots around this central hole, and then hopefully I should just be able to stick these legs on. And hey presto, we have a little table. Oh my god, I'm actually obsessed with this. That's so cute. It may be a tiny bit lopsided, but we're just gonna ignore that. Also, wouldn't these look so good together in like a bachelor pad type room? I really need to make one of those. Okay, I was going to keep it to these 3/4, but since the table was so quick to make, I'm going to fit in one last craft, and this one is going to be a cat tower. My plan for this is based almost entirely on these little plastic tubes, which are the inners from these kind of spools of cotton thread. Every time I finish one, I save the little plastic tube in case it's going to be useful. And I feel like they are going to make really good bases for like cat scratching posts. I was hoping I would have some of that like jute garden string, and I do, but I only have it in green, which is not the most realistic. But I did find this light brown wool or yarn, and I think that's gonna look the best. So in order to wrap these with the wool, I'm going to first feed the end through the center of the tube. And then once it is out of the other end, I'm going to hot glue it in place on the inside of the tube. And I'll leave this little tail end loose because it's going to kind of get wrapped around later and that'll stop it from coming loose anyway. I'm also going to hot glue the opposite end into place, and then I can start wrapping from there, making sure to catch that tail end to secure it. Then when I get to the end, I'll once again try and feed the end of the yarn through the center of the tube and secure it the same way. And I think that turned out pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the others. I've just done 4 of them, which I think will be enough. We can always add another later. Next, we need to cut out some platforms for the cat tower, and for this I have some scrap cardboard from an empty cat food box, because that seems appropriate. I think based on the size of the tubes, I'm going to keep my platforms sort of around the 2 by 2 inch mark. I do want some variation though, so I've got 7 of the 2 by 2 inch squares. I've got 1 rectangle that is 2 by 2.5 inches, and then this one, which I think is 1.5 by 2. The largest one will be the base, the smallest one will be one of the little platforms, and so will one of the 2 by 2 squares. But I want to turn the other 6 2 by 2 squares into a little cube, essentially. Before I start gluing them together though, I want to cut a little doorway out of one of the sides. Okay, I definitely botched that a little bit, but it should be alright because I'm going to be covering everything with fabric anyway. Before that though, I'm going to hot glue them into my cube shape. For the fabric that I'm going to use to cover them, I've harvested some of this mustard yellow velour stuff from a cushion cover that I thrifted. And I'm going to use hot glue again to wrap the edges of my fabric around onto the bottom of my cardboard. Okay, I have them all covered now. The little box in particular took forever, and I also ended up having to shove a little offcut of the yellow into the back there to hide some of that internal text on the cardboard. And I also added a little scrap of contrasting fabric as like a blanket. So now we need to deal with constructing this. For the base, I think I'm going to use 3 of my little wrapped tubes. and have one in each of the back corners and one in one of the front corners. And then I think I'm gonna put the little box house bit there. And then I'm gonna use the smallest square / rectangle as a platform off to the side. Plus, on top of this smallest platform, I want to add the 4th scratching post. This one is actually a little bit larger than the others, and I think I would add it probably central and then have the last platform on the top. It's all a bit hard to try and visualize without gluing it in place. Every time I settle on a configuration, I end up changing my mind. See, if I put it lengthways like that, then having the scratching post central is gonna mean there's a lot more weight out to the side. This way is the most balanced, but I feel like if I do it this way, then our hypothetical cat has a bit more room to jump up and stuff. Okay, I think I'm gonna go with it being lengthways. I'll start with my little leg configuration, since that's kind of the only bit I'm completely certain about. And then I'm going to glue the little house and the smallest platform together. And then glue that on top of the legs. Construct our last little scratching post platform thing. And then I'm gonna try and line that up on top of the 3rd bottom leg over here. And our little cat tower is finally done. I'm really happy with how it came out. There might be a little bit of wonk to it, but again, just like the table, we'll be ignoring that. I feel like for the full effect, I should add my little cotton wool sculpted cats. And they fit pretty nicely as well, so that's good. Also, speaking of animals, have you guys seen the new Mini Brands pets that are coming out? I think they're being released in like July in the UK. I'll put some pictures on the screen. How cute is this hedgehog? I'm not entirely sure if the hippo is to scale, but it is a baby one, so, you know, if I ever make a zoo set. Anyway, mini brands aside, that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed, I would very much appreciate a like and maybe even a subscribe if you'd like to see more. The next video will be another room build, although I do just quickly want to note that the UK is in a heat wave at the moment, and several of my chronic illnesses come with pretty extreme heat intolerance. So I'm struggling a little bit. Fingers crossed it should be ready in a couple of weeks, but you know, don't hold me to that. Whenever it shows up though, I will hope to see you next time. Bye!